Well, good morning, Sac City. And thank you, Trustee Haynes. We are so fortunate to have an outstanding board of trustees. In addition to Pam, we have other trustees joining this first Zoom convocation at Sac City. Today, I'm going to talk about moments that change everything. And the great leadership provided by Pam and our board is crucial in navigating these moments. All of us have had moments in our lives when we knew that something really important just happened. After that moment, you know that things will never again be the way they were before that moment. Everything has changed. Some of these moments are unexpected, and some are the result of careful planning. Some of these moments give us a completely new perspective on something we thought we already understood. Some are painful and stressful, and some of these life-changing moments are joyous. I want you to think for a few seconds about some of those moments in your life. A couple moments in my life come to mind when I realized everything had changed. One of those moments came for me now half a lifetime ago, back in March of 1992. I heard my doctor say three words that were totally unexpected and devastating. You have cancer. I will never forget the fear, uncertainty, and despair that I felt at that moment. Another moment comes to mind about 7 years later in July of 1999. That was when I put my newborn daughter in a car seat for the very first time leaving the hospital after her birth. It was so humbling to realize that this tiny person was so completely dependent for her growth and survival. I know every one of you have had similar moments in your lives, moments that shaped you and made you who you are. One of the nice things about these virtual convocations is that I'm having an opportunity to hear more of the speakers and had a chance to hear Michael Gutierrez speaking. And Michael, I couldn't help but think of that moment about a year ago, and I'll try not to get choked up thinking about it, when we heard that Michael had been in a severe car accident. Now, we've joked with Michael a lot about that first headline that said a 50-year-old Sacramento man involved in an accident, but the fear that we had after Michael was in that accident and knowing what an important person he was for Sac City and Los Rios. And now a year later to hear Michael talking about keeping the routine and leading Sac City to the place where it needs to be. That was a moment that was hard, but so glad that a year later, now we have a 51-year-old Sacramento City man who is president of Sac City. You know, those life-changing moments happen, and every few years, one of those life-changing moments is a shared experience. Some of us are old enough to remember when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon in July of 1969. All of us remember the shock when the Twin Towers fell on September 11th, 2001, and the unforgettable historic moment when Barack Obama was elected president on November 4, 2008. Most of the time, years separate these life-changing moments that we share together, but the last several months have been far from normal. Sometimes it's a cliche to say that something is unprecedented, but two life-changing moments that we shared, I'm going to talk about today, happened less than 3 months apart. Both moments have changed the future of Sac City, Los Rios, the future of California, and the future of the United States. And a third moment is coming later this fall that will impact us all. The first shared moment happened in March on Friday the 13th. Many consider that to be the tipping point with regards to the worldwide response to the COVID-19 pandemic. That was also the day that we decided together in response to COVID-19 that Los Rios was going to make an immediate transition to remote operations. Amazingly, we made the transition to remote operations less than a week later, on March 18th. As many have said, looking back, we could not have realized back in March the depth of the changes that we would have to make in response to the pandemic. We thought then that many of the changes were short-term and temporary. And now, though we all long for a return to face-to-face instruction and interactions, we understand that the changes we have made together will last through this fall semester and likely continue at least into the beginning of 2021. At this point, we are preparing for a spring semester that will be more like this fall than a normal semester. Honestly, we recognize that some of the changes we made in response to the pandemic were long overdue. Critics of higher education sometimes accuse us of being bound by tradition and unable to make needed changes without years of study and many committee meetings. To those critics, we have demonstrated since March 13th that we can make hard decisions quickly and without sacrificing collaboration and collegial consultation with stakeholders across our colleges. I am reminded of a quote by the great poet Langston Hughes. I have discovered in life that there are ways of getting almost anywhere you want to go if you really want to go. A crisis doesn't build the culture of an organization, but it certainly does reveal the culture. Many of you know how hard Michael and our 4 college presidents, the presidents of our collective bargaining units, and our stakeholder group and Senate leaders have worked through this summer. I encourage you to take a moment to thank the leaders who represent you when you have a moment. They've been involved in decisions that were difficult and frequently unpopular. Together, we may have made more decisions in the last 6 months than we did in the previous 5 years or more combined. Questions like, should we offer face-to-face instruction during the fall semester? Or how do we reduce our budget in response to the economic devastation caused by the pandemic? How do we provide broadband access and laptop computers to students? The convergence of all of these extraordinary decisions with this new budget crisis has created the opportunity and indeed the necessity that we work to get together in ways that we had not always done before. The second shared moment happened a couple of months into the pandemic on May 25th, 2020. The murder of George Floyd, sadly, was not unprecedented, but the reaction to his murder was something new. Those excruciating, unbearable minutes captured by cell phone video galvanized understanding that a chasm exists between what our nation states as its values and the reality of the lived experience for Black and African Americans in this country. The murders of Ahmaud Arbery on February 23rd and Breonna after the almost universal revulsion to George Floyd's death. So in a little more than 2 months, we all experienced 2 life-changing moments. First, a worldwide pandemic, then an unprecedented movement for social justice. Both of these moments have shined a bright light on inequalities and racism in the United States. Both of these moments have presented challenges and opportunities for the Los Rios colleges. We all know that offering things like thoughts and prayers and other words that have often been used in the past are beyond inadequate. We know that this moment calls for action and a willingness to be courageous in changing the systems that have resulted in unacceptable outcomes that have been accepted for far too long. So this has been a time of incredible activity and action, and the summer is going to carry over into the fall semester that begins Saturday for online courses. I want to share with you 3 areas where a great deal of work has taken place during the summer months. First, with respect to law enforcement, as you know, Los Rios has its own police department. Even before the tragic deaths of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, LRPD Police Chief Larry Savage and Vice Chancellor Mario Rodriguez were leading important efforts to improve and reform our police department as part of a larger effort to end police violence in America. Some of you have read about Campaign Zero, a national effort to reduce death and violence resulting from interactions with police. Chief Savage and the LRPD are committed to the policy solutions outlined by Campaign Zero. And we all have a shared interest in making sure our colleges are safe and welcoming places for all of our students, regardless of race or ethnicity. Second, the Los Rios colleges offer a variety of public safety programs, including administration of justice and peace officer standards and training programs, referred to as post-training. As a result, we have an extraordinary opportunity and certainly a responsibility to shape the future of law enforcement in our region and throughout our state. I'd like to thank our faculty and staff who rolled up their sleeves this summer to explore how we can be a positive influence on hundreds and thousands of officers who have or will be a part of educational programs at our colleges. We believe that the impact of our faculty on aspiring law enforcement officers can have a positive effect in changing the culture that too often exists within some law enforcement agencies. So the first two important efforts underway at Los Rios involve law enforcement and public safety. These efforts are very important, and the right people are engaged and involved and committed to fundamental improvements in both LRPD and our public safety educational programs. The focus on law enforcement and public safety involves a relatively small number of faculty, staff, administrators who are directly involved, while the third area of focus involves every single one of you at Sac City and across the Los Rios colleges. Together, we are going to focus on improving the success of all of our students in the classroom, with a focus on outcomes for Black and Latinx students this fall. 5 years ago, when we developed the Los Rios strategic plan together, our second goal was to ensure equitable academic achievement across all racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and gender groups. So we've been saying the right thing for some time. The difficult question we have to ask ourselves in the wake of these recent catalytic moments is whether the actions we have taken together in the last 5 years have been dynamic enough to be consistent with our lofty goals and values as stated in the strategic plan of 2015. Answering that question will require courage and honesty. I can't answer the question for anyone but me. And I have to tell you, I have not done everything I could have done in the last 5 years to make our stated goal of equitable academic achievement a reality. At times, I've been hesitant to share hard truths because I feared they might make people uncomfortable or at times even angry. For example, I was aware of the overwhelming research that demonstrated that standardized placement tests result in underplacement of many of our students of color. But I waited until state law required us to make changes to shift away from the approach we had used for decades. I regret we didn't take more actions locally to move away from reliance on standardized placement tests sooner in support of our goal of equitable academic achievement. As the sociologist Michael Blakey says, a people who are truly strong should be able to look soberly at both their accomplishments and their problems, past and present. And I know at Sac City, you are strong, and together we're going to look at both our accomplishments and our areas for improvement moving forward. Again, I want to thank and acknowledge President Gutierrez and everyone at Sac City for your commitment to making Sac City a college who serves the people. As the People's College, you have set the bar high in terms of willingness to change what needs to be changed if Black and Latinx and other students of color are not realizing the same outcomes as other racial and ethnic groups. With your work in achieving the dream, you've demonstrated an openness to looking for answers outside of Sac City, Los Rios, and even outside of California. Who would have thought that Odessa, Texas would be the source of so many wonderful ideas that are being taken to scale at Sac City? I know many of you have read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Kendi makes a powerful case it's not enough to be opposed to those who are explicitly, openly racist. The choice we have to make is between racism and anti-racism. The use of standardized placement tests as the sole way to place students is an example of the choice between racism and anti-racism. Because the standardized tests result in lower placement for students of color, Kendi would say there are two ways to interpret the policy. The racist view would be to argue that students of color did more poorly because of some inherent difference in ability. The anti-racist would argue that the standardized testing policy must be changed because all students, regardless of race or ethnicity, have the ability to succeed in college courses. During the summer, Michael and our 4 college presidents came together to establish 2 clear, focused student success targets for the fall and spring semesters. Now, the metrics are not new. Both were outlined as part of our collaborative approach to aligning with the statewide vision for success, the state chancellor's office ambitious goals for student success. The first target is to increase course completion for Black and Latinx students. The second target is to increase throughput by Black and Latinx students in transfer level math and English which is just another way to say that we want more students of color enrolling in and completing these courses. To establish the targets, the president's first looked at the data for each of our colleges. Across Los Rios, the results for our Black and Latinx students and other students of color in the last 5 years are not what we know they should be. I know you have had opportunities during Flex Week to explore the data at Sac City and also at a departmental level. Many of our faculty are also looking at disaggregated data by race for your individual courses. Now, to help us examine and unpack this challenging data and the realities before us, we are holding a town hall meeting a week from today, next Friday morning, August 28th, beginning at 9 a.m. You will receive a Zoom invitation next week for the town hall meeting. If your work schedule does not allow you to participate live, we will share a recording of the town hall meeting for you to review later. Many of you have had an opportunity to meet Lasana Hotep and Cynthia Olivo, two wonderful colleagues who are going to help us translate our values of equity and inclusion into action as we address the differences that exist in student outcomes based on race and ethnicity, particularly for our Black and Latinx students. The town hall meeting on the 28th will be an opportunity for staff and faculty from across our 4 colleges to join together as we chart a course that reflects the urgency of this moment. As I noted earlier, we are also going to share a third moment in the coming months as the economic reality of the pandemic results in budget reductions from the state level that will likely be more severe than anything any of us have experienced in our careers. It is not exactly clear when that moment will happen. The state budget passed in July was a balanced budget in name, but in name only. The legislature closed a $54 billion deficit based on the impossible hope that Congress would provide enough pandemic relief to California that the state would not have to implement substantial cuts, but we know those cuts are coming. Convocation is an opportunity to share optimism and excitement about a new year. And I am optimistic and very excited about the work we're going to do together. It is also my responsibility to share information about important statewide issues, including the budget. All of our college leaders and stakeholders have encouraged me to be transparent and direct about the reality of our budget and the challenges we are going to face together. As we begin a new year, budget reductions have already had a very unfortunate impact on our adjunct faculty and temporary classified employees. As a result of state law and our collective bargaining agreements, we are required to reduce part-time employees first when our budget contracts. It is difficult to hear and very hard to have to say, but the level of budget cuts we are facing in the coming months will likely be deep enough that we will all be touched by them in one way or another. Many government organizations in the capital region have already implemented furloughs and other drastic measures in response to economic and budget catastrophes taking place. We hope to avoid those more drastic measures. One feature of the California state budget approved by the legislature and signed by the governor is massive deferrals of payments to Los Rios and other community colleges. For those of you who did not experience the impact of the Great Recession on Los Rios in 2008, deferral is a fancy way that the state says they don't have money to pay us. As a result, we have to use our reserves and borrow money to make our payroll. If the deferral lasts through the fiscal year, as seems possible this year, it is actually a cut for the year in which it is implemented. It is too soon to know how deep the additional cuts are that we will have to make together in this fiscal year and fiscal year 21-22 beginning next July, but we anticipate that these could be the largest reductions, both by percentage and in total dollars, in the more than 55-year history of the Los Rios Community College District. So we begin this year together in the aftermath of two moments that have changed everything. First, a worldwide pandemic that has resulted in a rapid transition to online education and remote services. Second, a reckoning involving racial injustice and systemic inequalities that was catalyzed by the murder of George Floyd. And we are preparing for the impacts of a third moment we know will come in the months ahead as a result of drastic reductions in state funding caused by the pandemic. So without question, the year ahead will be incredibly challenging for all of us. The stress caused by the pandemic is continuing, and now we have horrible fires around the state and smoke and air quality conditions impacting everyone in Northern California. For some, the isolation and loneliness of living and working at home alone can be a tremendous challenge. For others, working at home with children either too young to be in school or beginning a school year with Zoom and parental supervision presents entirely different challenges. And the same stresses of life that existed before the pandemic continue, often amplified in the series of cascading crises we have experienced together. Illness, surgery, birth, death, divorce, and marriage have continued in the crucible of a global health crisis. Whatever your personal situation is, and I want to echo Michael's thought that we need to take care of ourselves and each other, we all share a tremendous opportunity this year, in spite of the challenges we face, to make changes for our students that will have lasting impact this semester and for years to come. We have seen just in the last 6 months how much stronger we are when we work together. As President Obama said, we need to turn to each other, not turn on each other. We've demonstrated over and over again that we have the courage to find a way to do what needs to be done, even if we thought it was difficult or impossible before the pandemic. So much of what is going on in the world outside can make us feel like we have no control. But we do have control over how we work with students in our classrooms and in all of our interactions in student services at our colleges. And we can choose to be anti-racist in our personal actions and in our policies. I encourage you to call me or email me at kingb@losrios.edu and share how I can help support you on this journey we're embarking on together. With that in mind, I want to close by asking you to think again about those personal moments you have experienced and the choices and decisions you made when you responded to that moment. It's hard for me to believe, but that newborn daughter I strapped into a car seat for the first time back in 1999 celebrated her 21st birthday last month in very different conditions than would have been the case before the pandemic. She's also finishing her last year of college remotely, as are most California college students this year, and getting ready to begin her career as an elementary teacher. And it may sound strange, but being diagnosed with cancer back in 1992 has had positive impacts on my life in ways I could not have imagined in the dark days after my initial diagnosis. I appreciate even more that every day is a gift and that many of the distractions in life that can take up so much time often just aren't that important in the big picture. So thank you again so much for all you have already done on behalf of our students in this difficult, challenging, unexpected, unprecedented time since that moment on March 13th, when a new reality began. And more importantly, thanks so much for the courage you are demonstrating to make hard, important changes for our students in the months and weeks ahead.